Well, from AM Business, we go straight into our big stories. And this morning, we're contemplating quite a number of issues in terms of our economy. For example, when we are told by the CDD's latest report that is going to be impacted, that is how much we get from these foreign countries, the West specifically, and institutions that give us loans, that we're going to be suffering if we push through the LGBTQI plus bill. What does that really mean? We'll bring you details of that, even as we interact with the members of parliament we're going to be speaking to on the economy, on the recent ratings, and on the e-levy moving forward. We're also going to be talking about student leaders and how they feel, divergent opinions on the UTAG strike. All of that as we get into our big stories. We have Member of Parliament for Bongo, Edward Abambere Bawa, joining the conversation. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
We also have joining via phone Dr. Stephen Amwa, Member of Parliament for Inshiaya, so he'll be on the lines shortly. But here we are discussing our economy once more. It appears to have become a pet subject in recent times, something that we are talking about day in and day out. But what is your initial reaction, since we've not got to speak on the Fitch, the Standard & Poor's, and the Moody's ratings? What is your reaction to the ratings we've got in recent times? Fair reflection of where we are, economically speaking?
Yeah, so good morning to the viewers. Basically, I think that it's unfortunate that our country has gotten to a state where we cannot hold our own when it comes to how we are doing in terms of the credit ratings. Obviously, that's the basis for which any investor will want to invest in your economy. As to whether it is fair or not, that's one thing that it is obvious, because the reasons they've mostly given two reasons.
Right.
Liquidity challenges and debt and sustainability. These are the two things. And the facts on the ground, all the economic data that has been published seem to suggest, whether through the budget, through the Bank of Ghana and what have you, seem to confirm that. As we speak today, the country is struggling when it comes to how to even manage our debt. Just in terms of amortization and the interest payments, it's about 46 billion that we are supposed to pay for this year. So it gives you a very clear indication that if you look at our debt to GDP ratio, which in our own estimation is somewhere around 83%, it tells you very clearly that as a country like us,
we're told we're around 78
when you use
percent. Of course, we've seen the global, some global entities actually put us at 83%.
And the reason why they put it
we've seen some of those.
What government has done.
But our administration is saying we're at 78%.
The reason why, what government has done is to decouple some particular loans and ring-fence them and do not put them on the national debt. I'll give an example. The ESLA, the Energy Sector Levy, you remember that it was collateralized under the ESLA PLC, and then we went in for about 10 billion. That is a particular loan that government does not put on the national debt. Meanwhile, it is money that we are supposed to pay. You see the Sino Hydro. You remember that they said it was collateralization, and therefore it was not loan. But the moment you start drawing down on those loans, it becomes a burden on the country. So far, we've taken about 600 million from the Sino Hydro, from government's own reporting. The Dachi, we've taken about 2.8 billion. So it gives you a very clear indication that when you put all these particular type of loans that are hidden outside the national basin and put them together, for somebody in there, so for IMF, for the World Bank, for all other, even the credit ratings, agencies, they will look at your total debt, and on the basis of that, make a case out of it. So if you have a debt to GDP ratio that's about 83%, obviously your debt sustainability issues becomes a challenge for us. Liquidity, my brother, just three expenditure items exceeds the current revenue projections by about 12.5 billion. Because if you look at the projections that we have given that we are supposed to have, if you look at our total, including e-levy, we are supposed to be able, the projection is that we are supposed to have 100.5 billion. If you take amortization and then interest payment, if you take compensation, and you take statutory funds, that the DACF, that's the Disassemblies Common Fund, the National Health Insurance, the Road Fund and other things, those earmark funds, if you put them together, the total amount is 113 billion. So already from the word go, per our laws and per the Constitution, you are already running a deficit of about 12.5 billion. So if you have that, and you yourself, you have decided to indicate that in terms of your 2022 budget, your projection is that your capex is you are going to expend about 16 billion. Your goods and services is going to be 9 billion. That's already another 25 billion. So from the word go, you are tight. There's no money anywhere. Government has indicated that, look, per this and that we intend, that as part of their measure, their fiscal consolidation measure, the finance minister, post the budget, had announced that they were going to cut expenditure by 20%. But government has not told you where and where they are going to cut the expenditure. They have not. And I remember that was one of the things that Professor Bokin said to your station here. Because the reason is that the three expenditure items I told you, that sums up to 113 billion. They cannot cut it. Because those things are statutory.
Which are what exactly?
The compensation, the interest payments, and then they cannot cut it.
Right.
So government should be able to tell us, is it the case that they are going to cut in terms of the goods and services?
But I think there's been some indication.
And what is the indication?
That even the allocations to different ministries, different sectors, will see some of these cuts.
Yeah, but you see, the allocations do not include, and that's the point I'm just trying to make. In terms of compensation, is it that they are going to reduce salaries? Because the compensation, are they going to reduce salaries? That is one thing. Interest
so that is out of the question.
That's out of the question. The interest payment amortization, is it that they are going to say that they are not going to pay the people?
We must meet our
you must meet that.
Right.
What do you call it? The DACF, the Disassemblers Common Fund. It's a constitutional obligation.
But at least we know with that one, there's a bit of leeway. I mean,
no,
we know of delays that are... So
you see,
there at least, whether for good or for bad, we know that can be. That can be. I don't want to say manipulated, but...
No, but that is what, for example, somebody from... because you are talking about the fairness of the rating agencies.
Right.
The rating agencies look at your law. Your law says that X amount of money from your total revenue must go to DACF.
Right.
And so for them, they do the calculation. If you decide to flout that particular law, that in itself is not good governance.
Right.
Are you getting the point I'm making? It goes against you as a day. So it means that these are the statutory funds, the earmark funds are no areas for all of us in terms of those things. So they cannot be seen to be cutting those things. So if you have those things, already that outstrips your revenue projections. The only place they have, if they are going to follow the law, follow the constitutional what they call provisions and what have you, the only place they have is to say that this year there's not going to be capital expenditure. It means that this year we shouldn't be expecting them to construct any road. We shouldn't be expecting them to their what do you call the thing? Agenda 111, the hospitals. Right. We shouldn't be thinking about it. This year, in terms of goods and services, we should forget about the whole idea of having to deal with those ones. So clearly, government does not have it. So for me, it is a fair reflection of how we find ourselves. Indeed, even you see that, you know, the three rating agencies,
right,
in terms of Fitch, in terms of Moody's, and then the S&P. S&P, even though they maintained their original ratings, they did that on the basis of the fact that government, and you realize that they said that in the next they will review that in the next 6 months. They are hoping that...
Yes, they've said that, in fact, within 3 to 6 months.
6 months.
Not up to
6 months. 3 to 6 months.
They are going to be reviewing, and they would consider whether to maintain us or downgrade.
So it means that there's a contemplation of the fact that they want to downgrade, but they just want to listen to government. Government says that they are going to cut down on their expenditure. So maybe government thinks that they can make some revenues available. And you see, in terms of even getting some liquidity space, may not necessarily be as a result of the fact that you should be increasing what they call taxes. It could also be the fact that government may also look up, because the expenditure cutting is just to be able to give you an opportunity to have something to deal with.
Right.
But maybe there may be some measures, because the finance minister had indicated that, look, they are going to see how they can plug the holes in terms of how the seepages take place, in terms of wastage in the system.
Right.
Even though government has not brought us any comprehensive plan as to how they are going to address those things. So for me, again, to answer your question, I think it's a fair reflection. And you know that when government decided to appeal to Moody's in terms of the fact that they felt that the ratings were not fair, they had not taken into consideration two major issues. One being the fact that they said they were cutting down expenditure. The second being that Ghana was a beacon of democracy, and therefore stability, political risk, and other things were very low. The question that you ask yourself is, if you take Ghana being a beacon of democracy, currently, what we are doing, most countries have done the same thing, and they have not, their democracy have not survived. It's just because for us, to a very large extent, Ghanaians are a bit adverse to issues of interventions and other things. But in terms of the conditions prevailing, is it the best? You have a situation where you finish an election and the number of people who die is more than a coup d'etat. That cannot be a beacon of democracy. You have a situation where there are a lot of other things that government must follow strictly because this is what the law says. And if state institutions are compromised, people will observe these things. So when government...
Are you suggesting all of these went into whatever rating?
When you say something...
And when you say, for example, that you are done with an election and it's more than a coup d'etat, people dying, I mean, is that factual?
It's factual. It's factual. Since 1992... How many people lost their lives in the last election? In the last, about 8 people lost their lives.
Yes, I knew you would go back to the 8
number, not 8.
Which has been contested, by the way. But
once they contest, the people have not died, or... Excuse me, no, don't go far.
I mean...
No, let's come back to it.
Talk about whether...
Let's come back to it. Is it that the people didn't die?
Related to the election.
Excuse me? They said what?
There's been a contest about whether all of those deaths were related to the election. I mean,
so what were they related to?
Well...
They got malaria. They got malaria and died. You see, I'm just making the point that these are very... what do you call it? They were not just brought from the space or Mars. They have family members, and they are no longer with them. They have buried them, performed funerals. So when somebody is saying that you had,
I mean, this is no laughing matter, but your comments cracked me up.
So anyway. I'm just making the point that the conditions under which they felt that Moody should have looked at Ghana favorably in terms of that becomes a and so I as a country, I think that let's all agree that look, we are in a shithole, excuse my language, and that we need to find a way of coming out of it. There must be a broader consultation. There must be all hands must be on deck.
You concur with what your presidential candidate in 2020 is saying? That we should come together
as a country.
He's been talking about a COVID-19 recovery plan, for example. That's what you're aiming towards.
So because you see, the crisis that we had in 2015, nowhere near the one that we have now. In 2015, the crisis we had were as a result of collapse of our commodities in the international market, the prices. We talked about a prolonged power crisis, and this definitely had an effect on our economy. Even with that, what the then government, under his leadership, was that, look, where we have got into, look, the famous saying, country broke, country no broke, we all day inside. Is that not it? Let's see how we can get these things done. Brought everything, even though the then opposition had encouraged their people not to attend. A few of them attended. You know, the respected economist Kwame Pianim attended, and then there was what they
he was actually the only one.
Yes, he was actually. Osafo Mafo also took off, got there, and they told her, oh yeah, there were. They called him and told him to come back. You understand? So, but I'm just saying that it is not for want of invitation. That's why they were not there. They were invited. So there were other stakeholders, other academics and what have you, who were there to be. And that's how we got what we call the document that came out of Senchi, the Senchi consensus. This was the document what we call the homegrown policies that we had. We took to the IMF. People will always question. So why would you have to go to IMF? There was a reason why we went to IMF. The international community will always have a feeling that since you are still the same government, you have brought out a policy that you want to stick to it. The question is that do they believe that the prescriptions you have given to yourself, you will really follow those prescriptions? And so there was a need to take that policy to the IMF for credibility's sake. So that people know that in terms of these things, these are the things that we have imposed on ourselves that we are going to do.
Right.
Quick one. If you look
and
at,
very quick, because I also want to bring in
yes,
Dr. Stephen Amwa.
the only thing that was changed by the IMF there had to do with the central bank financing. Right. You remember that they had said that in 2015 we should not exceed 5% in terms of central bank financing, and in 2016 it should be zero financing when it comes on in terms of the central bank. And this the government followed. So the 3-year program that was done was a program that was actually carved and fashioned out by Ghanaians, and that is what the president is saying, that look, our panacea is not the e-levy. The e-levy story that we are talking about is part of the revenue projections of the 100.5 billion. And so that cannot really solve your problem. Your problem goes beyond that. And that if you bring all the brains, and Ghanaians are blessed with a lot of talents, if you bring all the brains on board, we will be able to fashion out something to come out of these difficulties. Okay. And I think that's the way we should be looking at it.
Dr. Stephen Amwa, thank you for joining the conversation. Do we have Dr. Stephen Amwa on the line? Well, Dr.
Hello?
Stephen Amwa is Member of Parliament for Nshiayeso, and he will also join the conversation. Hello, Doc. Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. Yeah, I can.
Great. Ben here. It's good to have you join us on the AM show. We have your colleague, Edward Bauer, Member of Parliament for Bongo, in the studio.
Sorry. Thank you. Should I go ahead, please?
So I'm sure you've been following the conversation. I just wanted to find out from you, what is your reaction to the recent ratings that we've got from S&P's, Moody's, and Fitch? Of course, we've been talking about some of them, but Moody's has given us a CAA1 rating. They've stuck to their guns, and members from your quarters, Dr. John Kuma and others, have spoken against it. I recall that Dr. John Kuma said it was hypocritical and mere propaganda. Is that how you feel as well about the recent ratings?
My regards to our listeners this very morning. And seriously speaking, so the ratings got to the point where people are talking about people dying during elections and other things.
Right.
You see, the problem we have in our country is the fact that people think they can only win power when they do propaganda and deceive the public. Serious issues such as what we are discussing today calls for very serious analysis and very honest, holistic. It's not only fornication which is sin. I say this all the time. Yes, the ratings are out. It will be extremely difficult for me to infer that they were biased or not, or propaganda or not. I cannot, as a professional person in finance or macroeconomics. What I know is that they have various variables, even reserves and others. They are all part, GDP. But now, the difficulty has been concentrated on probably our debt to GDP, the rate at which we are borrowing or we have borrowed. And this is where we need to analyze this critically. We cannot take just one or two parameters and say that the entire economy is in tatters. That is false. It is not true. Because we have other performance parameters we use in appraising all economies in the world. And you know, most of these parameters that we inherited are doing so well. At least they are better than we took over. We need to address these issues. I'm not saying that our debt to GDP is not an issue to consider. They are talking about about 77%. This country, we've had over 100% before. Go and check the year 2000. We've had over 100% before. And that doesn't mean ours is good or better. I don't want to go in there. But the fact is, if you pick serious primary macro indicators such as even interest rate in our own country today, it's moved from about 37% to about 21%. Even government policy rate has moved from about 25 point something now to around somewhere 12 there. Check our T-bills. Check all of them, even reserve. So where our problem is today, which I accept, is our debt to GDP. Then let's analyze it. Is it remarkably the fault of the government? You cannot blame this government entirely unless you don't understand the issues or you're not being fair. We've had about 22 months of impaired productivity naturally. My colleague was talking about we had power outage for a long time. That wasn't a natural disaster. That wasn't a global issue. It was a mismanagement on the part of their government. I don't want to go in there. We've been in the country for so many months. Government had to pay public and civil service workers without they going to work because of the COVID. You are aware. We've been in a country where private sector had to sack over 40,000 people. The payee the government had to collect from them ceased. Corporate taxes ceased, went down so drastically. We had a situation where entities, companies, corporate bodies, market activities, industrial operations had to come to halt, and there was a point that we all had to even stay home. These practically affect productivity and will affect revenue generation. So government will not, sit down and say that my country should collapse when we have obligations. Some of them are statutory. You are talking about district common fund, whatever, that if you don't perform your obligation as a government, it's not good government. We're in check under them. Sometimes it went beyond 1 year. Go and check. I'm not saying because it happened it's good today, but we are talking about a situation that you cannot blame this government entirely. I'm not saying we shouldn't raise issues, because impaired productivity definitely affect GDP growth. And once GDP growth is affected uncontrollably, your debt to GDP will go up, whether you like it or not, because the debt is the numerator and the GDP is the denominator. And market activities and other things went down because of COVID. It is a fact. And because that happened, your numerator will go up. And government had issues 2020, revenue shortfalls. So definitely, another arm of financing government activities, apart from revenue generation, is that financing. These are issues. Whether we are rated high or not, the factors leading to even the ratings, even it is so, you cannot blame the government entirely. And that is why the PFM Act, 2016 Act 981, Section 18 thereabout, talks about three conditions, or strict three conditions: when there's natural disaster, when there's war, when there's health epidemic. Upon consultation, our fiscal policies and rules as a country should be suspended. Go and check. So you cannot analyze an outlier situation like everyday situation in any society except Ghana. Ghana, let's accept the fact that if what we are in is not good, it is not entirely the fault of the government, because compare all these figures just before the COVID. Let's check all of them. So what we are saying is that we accept the fact that our debt to GDP is becoming alarming. As a country, we need to do something about it. Our fiscal space is congested. We need to consolidate it. How can we do that? We need to generate revenue.
Right.
We need to generate revenue. And here is the case that a very government that is giving the mandate to manage the economy thinks, analyzing all alternatives, this is the best way to go. Then out of propaganda from NDC, they've been able to influence some stakeholders in the country, putting pressure on the government not for government to embark on the policies and adopt the right options that will see this country through, because they want to come to power. If they think the yield levy is not good, it's going to make us unpopular, as they've said. You're going to lose election because of that. You think they will not let us pass?
Let me come in here. I just want to find out from you, in reality, just for the sake of clarity. Other institutions from outside of Ghana peg our debt to GDP ratio at 83.3%. Is it 78% or 83.3%? Can you give us some clarity on that?
I don't want to guess. I beg you. I cannot guess. But whether it's 73 or 83, the fact of the matter is that they are all not good figures. Even if it's 73, it's not a good figure. But the point is, let any professional in this country, any professor or doctor, come and tell us that it is as a result of entirely mismanagement of this government. It's not true. It is never ever true, because GDP growth, the two main functions are productivity and labor force. Labor force in terms of size and in terms of scale components. And the private sector had to sack, I told you, over 40,000. Market activities were totally halted. Your GDP cannot grow. It is not a fact. And if it doesn't grow, your debt to GDP will go up. And because there were no activities, we're not getting the revenues we needed. So these are factual issues that, let's be honest with ourselves and God. Anything the rating agencies, S&P ratings was different from
Moody's and Fitch, right?
They are different. So it means that there's something we need to dig deeper. But whichever way, once your debt to GDP to me gets to 70, it's not anything good for us to be happy with. Then how do we go about it? Do we still continue to borrow? No, because people are saying that we are borrowing too much and our debt to GDP. Let's take taxes. They are saying that, we have not touched base with the informal sector. We need to widen our tax net. Government comes with a new policy. You say, hey, cancel it. We don't want it. People will do this. Hell will break loose. So how do we consolidate our fiscal space as a country? And then he goes on saying that election people, that this propaganda, we should stop. My brother, go to Asinafo North. Go and have I can send you pictures, you will weep. How people were, cut into pieces. People were shot. I don't want to mention names because of ethical reasons. If you're talking about political violence, with the exception of what happened during Nkrumah's time, that we had the Bafo issue, check which of the fraternities in our country today actually put us in a situation where political violence nearly became a culture. The people were even saying the MPP for a week. Sorry for speaking to MPP for most of them are come for almost 4 days. You remember, we don't want to go in there. Let's address issues. Government, in terms of managing the economy, they should state other parameters which are very important in appraising any economic performance and compare them as we took over. Just check all of them. They were even growing GDP around 3.2, 3.4%.
But here's another fact. Here's another fact, Dr. Amwa, right before I come back to Edward Bauer in the studio. You would say that COVID-19 has been a bit of a scourge, in fact, globally, but it's also been a blessing, hasn't it? We've had the biggest bailout our country has ever seen. I mean, 33 billion Ghana cedis from the IMF, from the World Bank, by way of SDR. All of that has come to us, the cedi equivalent of 33 billion. The question is, what exactly have we done with this money? Yes, we've heard from Pierre Laporte, the World Bank representative in the country. He says we've been satisfactory in dealing with COVID-19. But that same person has also said that they are going to investigate how we expended our COVID-19 funds, at least what they gave us, the 560 million. And if we've not expended them for purpose, they're going to ask for a refund. How do you react to that?
Okay, thank you very much. I think people make arbitrary statements. They mention the figure, but they don't mention the volume of work, the obligations that we have to perform. 2, you said that the World Bank or IMF rep said
World
that
Bank
yes,
representative.
we've done well in terms of satisfactory the work we've done. I agree. But let me tell you, these white people, even when their companies make profit, they still do further investigation, go through how they made a profit to improve on, or definitely along the value chain, everything cannot be 100%. You and I know. Even along the value chain of multimedia, the things you execute, it can never ever be 100%. I don't want to say things publicly. It's like I'm banter, I'm debating you or something. But what I'm saying is that they say they'll investigate. Let us wait for them to finish the investigations. And I also quoted the PFM Act that even in times such as this, our fiscal rules and policies upon consultation should be suspended. Maybe Ghanaians have not looked at that extract, that what it means, because there are a lot of knee-jerk decisions will be taken. People were dying. We were scared. A lot of things might have gone wrong. It's possible. All right. That might not necessarily mean that somebody deliberately did wrong or right. But what I'm saying is that all the inflows you are talking about today, I'm expecting the same experts and professionals to come and tell us that in terms of our discretionary spending arm of our budget, A, B, C, D were performed. In terms of statutory, A, B, C, D were performed. In terms of the COVID and other natural requirements in terms of our outlays, A, B, C, D, they all amount to 1 billion. We have 4 billion. Where is the balance or the excess or whatever? This is how we do it. But people cannot just make blatant statements and say that we had so much and that we should show how we spend the money and where we spend the money. These things, they are all propaganda tools. But I'm not saying we shouldn't raise them. The point I'm making today is that any professional person should engage some of us publicly, bring international experts to come and analyze the fact that if you have impaired productivity, will your GDP grow? I'm asking you. Will your GDP grow? I'm asking you. It will never grow. And if your GDP is not growing, if your revenue generation is affected within that time, if government had to spend a lot on poor issues and make sure that we leave this country from totally going down so that we can stabilize it post-COVID, we can move on as a country, then somebody somewhere doesn't want to face facts And now, because of propaganda, we attribute everything to COVID. All Ghanaians are saying this. These are all communist inferior tactic statements. The fact of the matter is that ask any professor to come and tell us that if we have impaired productivity for about 18 months, what will happen to your GDP as a country? Not even U.S. This is a fact. Look at America and other developing countries. Printed money because of this pandemic. They had to print money. And do you know the impact of printing money? It put inflationary pressure on even disposable income. Go and check. It puts pressure on our savings. You know, America has what? Inflationary rate of about 7% now. You go and check. UK has moved fourfold, about 400% from 1% to 4%. Their interest rate, unprecedented, from 0.5 to about 0.15. Let's be honest with ourselves. Even properly organized, established system, developed economies are going through some of these things.
Right.
But as a country, instead of us reduce the politics, analyze the situation, allow the government. How can you go to hospital with your issue and doctor diagnoses and doctor says tetracycline or quinine is the best thing for you, and somebody is saying that that is better or not? You want to die? This is what they want to do to this country. So we accept the fact that there is hardship. You cannot say 100% is COVID, but our debt to GDP is COVID. Because the GDP failed to grow because of impaired productivity. It is a fact.
Okay.
Weren't we asked to stay home, not going to work? Didn't the private sector stack a lot of people? Didn't they stay home? Ships that were bringing things to Ghana, since they were charging even $4,000, they were charging $12,000, $14,000. What you are here? It's 100% COVID. If you talk about the economy today.
So you say it's 100% COVID.
The very people that are talking plenty and making noise.
Right.
Even what they left with, is it only that GDP will consider in appraising economy in anywhere? It's not possible.
Just hold your thoughts.
Why can't they pay? Even inflation rate that they are making noise. We took over about 15.4%. What is it today? Even inflationary rate. The only time in the history of this country that government interest rate was higher than lending rate on our market today. And this is our government interest rate was 25.5. Now lending rate is about 21. It's never happened. So they shouldn't paint.
So I'll let you debate this bit about
Ghana is useless. There's no hope. It is not true.
Right.
These are propaganda issues.
Right. I'll give you ample time to debate the bit about which administration has fared better. But let me come back to you.
Which one, please?
I'm saying that later on I'll give you ample opportunity for the two of you to discourse on which administration has fared better economically speaking, and see what you have to say. But just hold on for me. Edward, I know you have some quick reactions. Make them very brief. And then let us know, because on the back of the World Bank's spending, our COVID-19 spending generally,
yes,
you have also spoken about the fact that, and I say you not in terms of you personally, but the minority in Parliament, about probing it to get to the bottom of the spending. So put them together in the point.
It's the first one. Just on the last point he was making about the fact that COVID was a very serious challenge for us. Nobody is doubting the fact that COVID hit many economies. But you compare your performance to that of your neighbors. And on the basis of that, you make an assertion. We have always indicated that our crisis that we have today was not just purely based on COVID, but was also based on unbridled expenditure in the 2020 elections. We have always made that point. Now, just
so it's self-inflicted.
It's self-inflicted. Let me make this. Let me tell you. We're looking at what we call the fiscal deficit, which after the elections was almost 16%. It was 15.7, isn't it? Look at and compare to other countries. Whilst Ghana was 15.7, Benin was 4.7, Burkina Faso was 5.7, Cote d'Ivoire was 5.6. Gambia was 2.1, Guinea was 2.9, Guinea-Bissau was 9.5, Liberia was 2.6, Nigeria was 5.8, Senegal was 6.2, Sierra Leone was 5.6, Togo was 6.9.
So of all of these, we were the highest, over 15%.
Yeah, over 15%, whilst the next highest was somewhere around 6%.
Actually, it's 9 point something, because I think you mentioned...
No, I didn't mention. There's no 9 here.
That had
no,
9 point
there's no 9 here.
Do check again, because
let me check.
You say 9.
0 point, I'm coming. So I have 3.0, sorry, I'm reading 4.7, 5.7, 5.6, 2.1, 2.9. Okay, yeah, you're right. Guinea-Bissau was 9.5. You're right. So you realize that this was purely self-inflicted. Because COVID was not only in Ghana. COVID was in Togo. COVID was in Liberia.
It was global. Yeah.
It's global.
It is global.
So, yeah,
it's still with us.
So it tells you that what was it that was different from that of Ghana is because we had an election in 2020. So part of this, the current crisis we are in, it's not just attributable to COVID. So that's the first point. My second point I just want to make, he had stated that look, the issue of power crisis was self-inflicted. I agree with him. It was self-inflicted, but not inflicted by the person who solved the problem. And luckily now, this was a sector I had worked in for about 7 years. You will recall that our power crisis was not only in 2015. You remember that there was power crisis in 2007 and 2008. You remember?
Yeah.
And it was just because of the issues of about generation deficit. Throughout that period, when we came back, when we finally started having power again in 2009, ask yourself a very fundamental question. What did we do? Nothing. It was just because Akosombo came up again in terms of water. Because between 2001 and 2008, when Akufo left government, not a single megawatt was added to the generation mix. So it tells you very clearly that this was a disaster waiting to happen. And that's why His Excellency the President, the then President, John Mahama, went to Parliament and said, look, I know this is a challenge and that I am going to fix it and fix it once and for all. And that's why today you hear people saying that we have excess capacity and they now talk about capacity charges. So that is the other point. Now the third point, on the COVID expenditure, my brother, there must be some level of transparency on how we deal with these things. And that's why when my brother talks and says that, look, we should be able to state that X was spent on this, Y was spent on that, Z was spent on this, and then we know that whether there was a differential. If that delta, how would then question people how they are supposed to account for those ones? I'll give you a typical example. Look at when they came, when we are trying, before we come to what we call the appropriation bills, we always will have to do an assessment of what happened in the previous year. In the course of doing those, what they call auditing purpose and looking at how those monies were spent, if you take the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs had expended 65 million Ghana cedis on COVID-related expenditure. When we asked them for the details of it, they said they didn't spend it. They said they did not spend it. 2, Ministry of Health.
What was the clarity given then? If they did not spend it,
they said it was expended somewhere else, but put in their books. It was expended in their name. You understand what I mean? It was expended in their name, but they did not do it. 2,
for accounting or finance purposes, what would you call that?
That is simply just, I don't know, but that's irresponsibility. And in fact, to be very sincere, if you want me to be very blunt, this is thievery. This is thievery. 2, under the Ministry of Health, there was a 35 million Ghana cedis that was also expended. And that it was expended for conferences and then workshops and meetings. That was in 2020. At the time when, my brother, you and I know that because of COVID, there were no conferences and other things held. It's not true. And most things were done by Zoom. So then we asked, this 35 million, let's see what summed up to give us the 35 million. Is it the cost of data? Because you're using Zoom? Is it because of that? We wanted to know. You know what they did? They came with the fact that they came and said that, oh, part of it was for PPEs, part of it was for this, gloves and other things. And the question you ask yourself, how do you caption that under conferences and the meetings? It is on the strength of this that the minority decided to sponsor a motion in Parliament asking that the COVID funds should be expended. You recall that the CPI report that came out, not this year, the previous year, that's last year's own. The CPI report that came out, that gave us the ratings of 43, which is still the same this year anyway. Right. You recall that one of the major reasons they gave for the fact that we had that low score was because of the lack of transparency in how our COVID funds were expended. So already there's a very big question mark. So when you hear the country director talk about the fact that, look, we would want to investigate and see the monies that we extended to Ghana, how were these monies utilized, the utilization of these funds.
He says they've been expended, at least Ghana has fared satisfactorily, but they're going to...
Remember, yes, and I see, this is a diplomat. Remember that these Bretton Woods institutions, their country directors and others are also diplomats. They must be very careful how they put their things. But the very reason why, for the fact that they have a cause to say that they will want to investigate this, I mean, before his pronouncement,
is that an indictment? It doesn't mean they've done anything wrong.
Look, let me give you something. Before the announcement of the 430 million that they said that the total thing that they sent, Bank of Ghana, World Bank, extended to Ghana, Did you know that you had that money? They had given out that money. Did you know that? Did you know? What we knew was the 100 million they had, Bank of Ghana, World Bank had sent to us. $100 million, isn't it? Did we know the amount that they put? Until they called John Kuma and said, yes, he has agreed that yes, those monies were they transparent about it? So, when they were doing the report, even to Parliament, they said it was 100 million. So it tells you very clearly that these are people who simply are hiding a lot of things. So people hid behind COVID and decided to make sure that they rip us off.
You're suggesting a probe in Parliament.
Yes.
How far with that?
So currently, as we speak, as part of the initial stages, the Finance Committee, the Health Committee had invited the Minister of Finance to come and just give.
You've had issues with his failure to show up.
Yes,
in Parliament.
And that is the basis under which we have had issues because he's refused. And see, it is the arrogance with which they look into your face and tell you that we are robbing you, but you have no say in this. That is what they do. It's that sort of impunity. The fact that it is within their right to rob you. And that is exactly their behavior, their conduct, everything of theirs suggests that. And because at the end of the day, if today we find ourselves in the mess that we find ourselves, it is because there are certain things that are supposed to be done and they are not being done.
Let me just find out about this bit from Dr. Stephen Amwa. If you can hear me, Doc, are you still with us?
Please.
Can you hear me, Dr. Amwa?
I can.
Right. I just want you to react to this. So these assertions and, of course, more probes to happen on the floor of Parliament in terms of the health minister. But in terms of how we have fared in dealing with COVID and moving forward, I see this statement, and I just want to reference what Dr. Esibe Yeboah himself said, that he would prefer that we don't go the way of the e-levy, that we go the way of the IMF, because then we can streamline matters while getting up to about $3 billion in terms of funding, and then we can revamp our economy and make it buoyant again. I've heard some members of the MPP say, no, not the IMF. But take a look at this and tell me whether even if we push through the e-levy, we will not need still to go to the IMF. Bright Simmons tweeted today, and he shared a thought that got me reflecting. He says, unfortunately, it looks as though Ghana once again has waited too late, and the window for other lower conditionality IMF products has closed or is closing on it. But I still think miracles are possible. I really feel Kenya got off lightly in 2020 and 2021, and Ghana could have made moves too. Are we losing out when it comes to the IMF and their windows and maybe taking advantage of the situation rather than focus on the e-levy like we are?
Thank you very much. But just before then, I think it's also very important that one or two issues that my honorable colleague
Please make your reaction brief so that we can go to the substantive.
Yeah, but he said a lot, so give me the same space to also do that because people are listening to us. For instance, I don't think my honorable member has forgotten the fact that we done T1, T2 Asogli, where all power addition in terms of value that they cannot take credit is from the MPP fraternity. So when they say we never added anything, it was a lie too. We should have also been able to balance demand and supply at that time. What did they do? Went to the extent of engulfing this country in unnecessary and unproductive debt of take or leave. You remember that we are spending billions for something we are not supposed to use. I don't want to even get into all these things. But if he talks of thievery and corruption, they talk about all the time. Let's not talk about perception. I believe in courts of competent jurisdiction, jailing people. All the time the NDC is being in power. Some of their people have been jailed. All the time. This is what we can depend on. Perception, I'm not saying you should throw away, but you cannot. One is not guilty until proven guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction. I don't go in. Then talking about Dr. Esibe and other people's alternatives. Yes, in solving problems, we have alternatives. I respect their opinions. It doesn't mean what they are suggesting is wrong or right. It doesn't also mean that what other person also suggesting is wrong or right. Now, we are in government. Finance Ministry might have been privy to other pieces of relevant information that myself, maybe Dr. Esibe, maybe yourself, maybe even NDC brothers, they don't know. And once you have somebody out of this asymmetric information management issue is trying to make comments, you cannot authenticate that alternative better or more than somebody who is in the helm of affairs and has his own data point. So I think for now, we need to make sure that what the government is proposing by the year levy, let us allow the government and test that and see, maybe within 8-10 months, and see the impact on our fiscal space. Now, coming back to what my brother is saying, that the health minister spending, blah, blah, I am saying that I'm not a legal practitioner, but at least extra from the PFM Act gives me an opportunity to debate others who want to go against some of the decisions taken by the health ministry, that they spend this, without the authentication. Look, do we understand times that people are dying and times that we are making merry? You cannot, and that is why in the wisdom of those who framed the PFM Act said that, I said that Section 18 there states that the 2016, go and read it, that when there's natural disaster, when there's war, when there's health epidemic, upon consultation, even our fiscal rules and policies, what are the fiscal rules and policies? What do they comprise? Go and check. So they cannot treat it like when we are okay, there's nothing, we want to go through the Procurement Act and stuff like that. They're just doing propaganda. Now, the most important factor we should all address is that our economic situation today is not the best because of our debt to GDP. And it's also because uncontrollably impaired productivity that really causes us. This is where I think we need to make sure that we work on. But if other people want to bring in propaganda and other things, then it distorts the plans of this country, including all of us. I respect their views as opposition members, but they are more interested in winning power than solving the problems today. And that is why they've not been able to provide any alternative measures. They have not been able to. They can investigate the health ministry, they can do whatever they want to do, but at least it is also emphatically stated that one of the countries that has managed COVID-19 very well is us, Ghana. It is a fact. He was naming other countries. We should find out what was their output. Did they do the same things that we did? Did they do the same freebies? Did they have the same space that we had? And the things, the activities, the expenditures, you cannot compare a situation where somebody gave almost everything freebie. I don't know whether all the countries, they also stop people going to work for the number of months, and they are still going through some, even up to now, government is paying some public and service workers who are not going to work.
Dr. Amwa, if you're speaking of free stuff,
gas in the world, go and check. The agreement, go and check. The government pays what?
Dr. Amwa, can you hear me?
$40 million.
Can you hear me, Dr. Amwa?
Go and check.
Can you hear me?
Just a top-up. Go and check.
Can you hear me, Dr.
So
Amwa?
we need to, yes, please. We need to analyze these parameters well,
right,
in order not to throw dust into the eyes of Ghanaians.
Well, aren't we paying for the freebies, the water and the electricity? We are paying for them, right? There's even the COVID-19 levy.
But I'm talking about the time we're using them freely. Because that could also generate.
But it couldn't have been free if we are paying for them. But I just want to get
no,
this.
No, but
quick.
out of the time we're giving to, we're not paying.
Right.
So government was only paying those things. It was expenditure we're making. That's what I want us to understand. Let's find ourselves. Let's find out whether those countries were doing the same work we're doing.
Right.
So you cannot compare apple and orange. You cannot compare the two. There are different jurisdictions, different space management, different economic situations, different population size, different areas that we're managing, and then the alternatives we're using were different. So
right.
you can't compare the two.
There are two crucial issues I want us to look at right before we wrap the conversation. The first one has to do with, and I'm coming into the studio, Honorable Bawa, the bit about the CDD's latest release when it comes to LGBTQI+, the bill, and how passing that into law could impact our economic fortunes. In fact, Mr. Anaba talks about the fact that the lead research member of the CDD talks about the fact that if we go this way, it will generate social disorder rather than order, and that it will affect our fortunes as we go out there to borrow, of course. A lot of these other countries in the West support LGBTQI activities, and they have different laws and principles on them. How do you feel about that? Are we just stretching this too far?
No, my brother, I think that I took the pain to, I've not seen what the research actually says, but I took the pain to read a reportage that was put on your portal.
Right.
And he seems to say that, look, these were experts and other things who had made those projections. We need to ask ourselves, since we declared ourselves as a middle-income country, what has been the performance of grants, particularly into this country, into Ghana? He says that if you look at our national budget, it has always been between 4 to 6% in terms of that. But that at one point, the Minister of Finance had the cost to say that we were drying up on that. We're drying up on that because the moment we declared ourselves as a middle-income country, issues of grants, issues of concessionary loans started drying up.
Right.
So it couldn't have been...
Because of our status?
Yeah, status.
Right.
So it couldn't have been that. So and that's why the situation that we find ourselves. But besides that, you see, a country that is ready to sacrifice its values just because of the fact that they want to have money, it's not a country that you should be proud of. Your values must always, your values and principles must always stand tall, irrespective of the adversity. And I think that Ghana has been performing very well without this total influence. Because normally you realize, I give you a typical example. Look, you even see that anytime they come with the budgets to Parliament, they tell you, particularly under the energy sector, you see that the amount of government allocation to the Ministry of Energy has always been very low. If you look, a greater part of it has always been either through donor funding and what have you. If you see the influence on that, it is only the performance of the donor funding in that sector is beginning to dwindle. It is not because of what they call it, what's the name again? LGBTQ, plus and what have you.
So do you not foresee that this could have any impact? I mean, the donor community, a lot of those countries you go to have some affinity with LGBTQI rights. Are you saying that you don't see any connection
as a country, if we put our apps together, we'll work very well. The Auditor General talks about 12.8 billion. Is that not it? In terms of financial irregularities, whether they are procurement irregularities, tax irregularities, stores.
But we know with those, it is so many things together.
That's what I'm making the point.
Right.
So the financial, that's what I'm giving. That is payroll, procurement, tax, stores, contract, cash irregularities. These things, do we have control in dealing with these things? We do have. I've always given, when the World Bank, what's the name? Man came to this country, is
it Pierre Laporte?
Yes, the World Bank guy who came to you people and was talking. He talked about the fact that we should take a second look at how our tax exemptions are being dealt with.
Right.
You remember, for over a year now, we have had this tax exemption bill that has been brought to Parliament for us to streamline how tax exemptions are given. My brother, if you look at how the tax exemptions are given to cronies and other things, what is the framework under which the state can give some exemptions in terms of taxes? We do not have it. There's a bill that is before Parliament. Right. For a full year, we've been struggling to see how government is never interested in, what do you call it, making us pass these tax exemption bills. That's the first point. Two.
And make it brief so that...
Yes, the other one, in terms of corruption, Shraj says that in terms of the country, we lose about $3 billion annually just to corruption alone. If you do it 1 to 6 in terms of rating, that's about 18 billion. If we are able to just plug the holes in some of these things, these people who sit in their countries and think that men should start jumping about with other men and women should be jumping about with other women. And in fact, some of them are contemplating the fact that it is only legal for a man to be jumping over an animal. Just because of the peanuts they give us, we are ready to sit down and sacrifice the values that we stand for. We are products of our culture. Our culture tells us very clearly that these things are simply, what do you call it, offensive. And so, whatever the Mr. Naba man was talking about, I don't know who he was talking to, but let me say, if they want, they should go to hell.
All right. Doc, how do you react to this? Yes, there's been the talk about the fact that if we're more self-sufficient, we wouldn't have to be going through this. But the suggestion by the CDD that if we push this bill into law, the LGBTQI plus bill, it will affect our economic fortunes. Do you agree with them?
To some extent, yes. But I think that doesn't mean that our sovereignty and our discretion, our prerogative right, and our exclusive right will be compromised as a country.
But let's face it, Doc. If you don't control the purse strings, if some other entity pulls the purse strings and they react in a certain way, when you go for their money, don't you think that there's some manipulation in that?
Yeah, what you're saying is perfect. And what CDD is saying, yes, socioeconomically it will affect us. That's a fact. But that doesn't mean we should compromise our sovereignty. That's my position. But I think I want to correct this because I think your platform is the most prestigious now. And if there's something you really know, we need to work on. Those who are keeping on saying that financial irregularities, summary of the financial irregularities 2020, is 12 point something billion. It's not true. I beg you. Receivables can never be classified in any field of financial framework or reportage that it is irregularity. Go and check. Over 10 billion out of about 12.8 billion forms part of receivables, debtors fund. It's never irregularity. Please go and check that again. As my brother is stating that, because it's been deception thing being used in Ghana today, and that is false, probable false. I wonder why the Auditor General's report contains that and deceiving the entire country. Even simple accounting. Where do we place receivables in our books? I mean, it's very dangerous. But if I want to put that aside and let my brother say, go back and check that thing. He is my colleague. We can meet in Parliament and discuss this. But what I'm saying is that I'm against this whole issue of homosexuality. And I support anything that will go against it. If we will suffer, we should suffer. That will even teach us a lesson to be independent economically. I believe we have to. A country with huge endowment of natural resources and raw materials, some of them do not require complex value chain to produce them and create sustainable jobs and be independent economically. We are always being influenced and attacked and blackmailed and intimidated because somebody has bigger economy. Yes, it will impact us. That one, CCB, we agree with them.
Right.
But what do we do? I still think we are a country with sovereignty. You have our exclusive right, our prerogative, our discretion to manage what Kwame Nkrumah said, what black man is capable of. We have made a lot of mistakes over the years, about 40 years now. I agree. But we need to set up. Some of these things should tell us that we should begin to think together as a people and plan big and think big and have a long-term plan to make sure that one day if there's war,
right,
global war, and we can't move to Togo, we can't go to UK, nobody can supply anything, what will we do? Some of these things should rather caution, especially NDC and PP, to sit up very well and manage this country very well going forward. I believe in that. But I think that media personally, not my position as MPP government or MPP party, but me as individual, with my Christian background, I don't think I will support anything contrary. They can take whatever they want to take away from us. I would rather go for the LGBT.
All
and
right.
it's my individual statement, I beg you.
Right, yes, and that is your individual opinion. You are not reflecting that of the party.
But what you are saying is a fact.
Bauer,
What you are saying is a fact, 100%.
We have to wrap the conversation on this point.
Just wrap. But you see, he talks about the fact that out of the financial irregularities, you look at outstanding debts and the loans, the receivables. Receivables were monies that you are expecting to get back. Isn't it? In 2020 alone, it was about 10,067,170,560. These were monies particularly that were channeled particularly through NBSSI through to their party apparatus during the 2020 elections. You recall that they were sending, under the guise of COVID expenditure, they were sending some monies to their people on mobile money or on mobile phones.
Right.
And these were and the reason why the Auditor General knows that these are monies, that these are financial irregularities, is because of one, the procedure under which these monies were sent to these people was wrong. Two, not all receivables. That's why sometimes even in accounting, some receivables auditors come and tell you that, or maybe the board of directors will look at some of the receivables and say that these things are bad debt and therefore we expunge them from our books. Expunge them from our books. Because receivable is that I'm expecting that you owe me, then you are going to pay me. If over a period of time, every time you have a situation where, in terms of your receivables, you say that you have 10 cedis, and I add it to part of my assets that I have. Meanwhile, I know that you are never going to pay. It becomes a bad debt. I don't know that I'm making sense.
Right.
And so the the Auditor General knows these are not monies that can be recovered. These are not monies that can be recovered. And guess what?
This conversation is one that
it happened from 2019, which was about 4 billion. It shot to almost 11 billion.
Right.
And this is because of, in 2020, they were going about giving freebies to their party people through mobile money. That is the issue.
Doc, just a quick one. Even as we look at who has fared better in terms of dealing with the economy, and that's a wrap. But we have the Marshall Plan from after World War II, and this is quite cataclysmic as well when it comes to COVID-19 and its impact across the world. Former President Mahama has suggested that we need a recovery plan, COVID-19 recovery plan. Do you agree with him?
I really don't know the context in which he spoke, respectfully.
Economically speaking, just like we had Senchi.
Yeah, but that is too broad. He's been a president before. He has more experience than me. He knows a lot of things I don't know. So I respect his view. But I think he has to be a bit detailed. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody knows that COVID situation called for very extensive planning and framework going forward to attain the needed our expected growth rate and also stability. I agree. So what he's saying, a lot of people have said that. But let me correct this. The receivables are not solely NAP and those things my brother is talking about. Even some of the components, they comprise or they consist of government workers who have been given advancement or advanced salaries. And these are guaranteed. They are in it. Go and read it. There is nowhere on this receivables. The fact that they can even lead to bad debt can be classified as financial irregularity. It's not done anyway. Because we have we have accounting standard, reporting standard. When it comes to audit, let's look at this aspect. That whether the financial statement prepared complies with the international standard, reporting standard is very, very important. And even if you talk about compliance and other things, which is very key when it comes to auditing, we need to also look at the components. So what I'm saying is that Auditor General report has to be reviewed. They should come clear on this because it's deceiving a lot of people. Okay. And I know my NGC guys, they are sharp, they know. But of course, politics, they want to do something with it. But moving beyond what we are talking about, what the former president is saying, we shouldn't hit scorn on that because he's a former president. We should take it, analyze it, and see if there is any sense or otherwise in it. We can add it because MPP, we are not, we don't hold all knowledge in this world, all pieces of relevant information to build in a socio-economic framework. No. So once he's a former president, we can also judge with him, get more understanding of what he's saying, and see the extra from his statement, which is good. That's how we build a country. And I think I respect what he's trying to do. But then I believe he's doing that without any politics. So that as a country, we can all be constructive and build the needed cohesion as a country and move this country forward. But I think the COVID-19, if Ghanaians support the YE levy and other policies government trying to bring to us or put on board or bring on board, trust me, within the mid-term and long-term, Ghanaians will start laughing again. But if they want to impede and impair everything that this government wants to do because NDC, they want to come to power, influence the media, some of the media practitioners, inside the public against government policies, then at the end of the day, we all suffer as victims along the cycle. We're grateful. What we need to be careful with.
We're grateful that you joined the conversation. Dr. Stephen Amoah, Member of Parliament for Nshia. So Edward Bauer, we are grateful that you joined the conversation as well, Member of Parliament for Bongo. I know you would have wanted to have another bite, but I think your thoughts have been expressed and time constraints as well. But thank you so much.
That's okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Now we take a break. When we return, we talk to you about the university students. USAC, for example, appears to have had a bit of a divided front. We're going to be engaging student leaders on the UTAG strike. It's still extant. There was an inconclusive meeting yesterday. We'll discuss that up next on the AM show. Do stay.